power utility Eskom announced around midday on Friday that it would implement load shedding stage 3 over the weekend. Now, this comes after breakdowns of units, straining generation capacity. This is the first time load shedding returns after 10 months of no power cuts. So did we celebrate too soon? And is this an indication that there is so much more work to be done to the utility until we can be free from the intermittent darkness? OUTA CEO Wayne Duvenage weighs in. Good morning, Wayne.
Good morning, Ms. Chara. Nice to be with you.
Good to be with you. Firstly, what is OUTA's stance on the current state of Eskom and the latest news regarding implementation of stage 3 load shedding?
Well, very concerning. If you just read the Auditor General's report, and I know it only goes up to the March 2024 period, but it sends a very clear message that we're not out of the woods yet. The mismanagement, the levels of corruption, and poor financial hygiene continues. We think it has improved slightly since Dan Marikana has come on board in the last year, and the current board has been in place for some time, doing some good work. But we're a long way out of the woods, and it just goes to show that we can return to load shedding very, very quickly if we don't get on top of the controls or the lack of controls and the problems at Eskom.
Now, you mentioned corruption. Would you then say that the government and Eskom dropped the ball in addressing the root causes of the energy crisis?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still a lot of concern, and the Auditor General raises it as well, that if criminal conduct and irregular expenditure and fruitless expenditure had been tightened up and gotten control of, they could start to eliminate these processes, and they're not on top of that. So this is pushing up the cost of primary energy costs. We are still hearing that we're buying coal that we shouldn't be buying, that coal that should have been supplied hasn't been supplied. And all of these weigh against the organization's ability to get on top of the corruption. We've heard recently as well not so recently, last year, that this ghost vendor, this token vending problem has cost the organization billions of rands, and it has been going for a number of years. And they've only just got on top of that. And the problem is, and this is also borne out in the Auditor General's report, is that there's very little consequences. So people can mismanage, people can misspend, and there's very little consequences. Nobody gets fired for the gross misconduct that is taking place.
All right. We'll talk about those consequences in just a second, but surely this could have been preempted. Were the warning signs of another energy crisis ignored or overlooked?
Well, again, that's why we have an auditor that looks at the process, the performance, and the financial hygiene, and we believe they have largely been overlooked. They're grappling with it. It takes time to turn around a big elephant like Eskom. We understand that. It is still overstaffed, and all of the operations and structure, you can return.
All right, I see the consequences of load shedding are real, and we are feeling them today, this morning in the studio. All right, that was Wayne Duvenage, or Duvenage. He says he doesn't mind whichever way his surname is pronounced, but just talking about it, that's the OUTA CEO weighing in on the issue of Eskom now announcing more load shedding after 10 months of no load shedding. Hopefully we'll get him back in the course of the hour. But more people have been implicated in the billion-rand housing tender, fraud and murder case involving former Cape Town MMC for Human Settlements, Malusi Boy, and suspected gang leader Ralph Stanfield. The case continued in the Cape Town Magistrates Court, with the accused appearing in person and virtually. A total of 29 people now stand accused in the more than 50 charges, including extortion, murder, and attempted murder. Our reporter Latasha Naidu filed this report, but before we bring you this package, we seem to have Wayne back on the line. Wayne, welcome back. I see we are not immune to the effects of load shedding. All right. Now, let's continue the conversation. Do you believe that the minister has held Eskom accountable, as particularly the leadership, for their role in the energy crisis?
It would appear that there's still a lot more work to be done there. This is not like an exact science where we think it's not black and white and it's going to be resolved overnight. I do think that there was a bit of complacency when you are out of the woods from a load shedding point of view for a number of months. I think we've sat back and breathed a sigh of relief. But if the minister and the leadership at Eskom had been watching very closely all of the factors that contribute to a well-managed organization and why they were not meeting all those targets, then I believe they haven't been watching this too closely. I mean, Eskom set its own targets for the last financial year at 65% energy availability factor. They didn't even achieve that, and the country's target for Eskom is 80%. So that's the type of problem we have, and we've really got to get there and get there through the disciplines that are required at all levels of management. I don't believe they've been watching that closely enough.
Let's talk about now the biggest elephant in the room, right? Electricity bills. What is OUTA's stance on the high electricity bills that South Africans are facing? Are these tariffs fair and are they reasonable?
You know, had NERSA been doing its job over the last 15 years of holding Eskom's management to account, to keep the high costs that Eskom was being subjected to through corruption and mismanagement, and we don't have to go into that, state capture records so much of that, then we probably wouldn't have the high costs that we have today. Now, you know, we're somewhat relieved that NERSA only granted Eskom a 12.7% increase after Eskom asked for 36%. 36% on close to 500% increases over the last 15 years. It was just an outrageous request. But 12.7% is still 3 times inflation. We cannot afford these high energy costs. So it is a problem, and the public are getting very, very angry with the situation.
And should Eskom be allowed to increase electricity tariffs? I mean, given the current state of the economy and the energy crisis?
Yeah, no, we believe not, and we believe that NERSA should have gone further. And not allowed them anything more than CPI. We've got to get back to normality when it comes to the increases of energy costs in the country. And, you know, Eskom has shot itself in the foot over the number of years. There's about 6,000 megawatts of energy that have gone off grid. That means they don't need Eskom's supply anymore. And Eskom cries about the fact that it can't sell enough electricity anymore. Well, it's a self-defeating spiral, race to the bottom in that scenario. Just picture it. And more people will start to find alternatives to Eskom, and Eskom still has this massive cost of energy generation and transmission that it has to cover. So I think NERSA needs to be a lot more hard on Eskom. We don't believe they have taken account of, for instance, the ghost token vending problem that has been there, which is now just being passed on to the public. Primary energy costs are still too high. And we just cannot continue in this vein. So I think there's a lot more introspection that is required by Eskom management and the minister to get the controls in place at Eskom. Yeah,
let's delve deeper into that introspection. Wayne, what are some of the immediate steps that OUTA recommends be taken to mitigate the effects of load shedding?
Well, I think, Eskom needs to return to being a well-managed organization. If they cannot look the public in the eye and say, we are on top of corruption, we have serious accountability measures, we take action, and there are consequences to leadership who are not managing this organization in the way it should be. We don't get that sense. So we need accountability for gross mismanagement, for the corruption and the lack of controls and the financial hygiene that we expect from an organization like this. We don't get a sense that is happening. So, and we see that again, and that's why we look at the Auditor General's reports, and that came out a few days ago, and it's horrific. if you just read the comments that are made there, the big one that stares out for us is where the Auditor General states that the qualified audit opinion implies that the cost of primary energy could have been much lower if the losses due to criminal conduct and irregular expenditure were in place. Now, just that statement alone says a lot about how badly the organization is being managed. So those are the focus areas that we believe management need to get on top of. Otherwise, we're going to have high costs, we're going to have a lack of controls, and we're going to slip into load shedding as we are doing now.
And do you think that OUTA and other organizations can partner with educational institutions or research centers and perhaps innovation hubs to develop and promote solutions to the energy crisis?
The energy crisis plan is there. It's not a bad plan. It's all in the implementation. I think Eskom knows what has to happen. It's not rocket science. When you manage any organization from small to big, of course, it gets more complex at an organization like Eskom. But you know what you have to do. You have to make sure that your procurement processes are robust, that you are not being ripped off, that what you have paid for is delivered on time, that you maintain your infrastructure and your working areas, and you ensure that the people you employ are competent, and there's consequences if they aren't or if they don't follow the rules. It's just put all of that in place. And we don't see enough of that. We don't see enough consequences when people are found wanting. And again, thousands of people inside Eskom, inside the organization, were responsible for ghost vending of these tokens for prepaid electricity. There are kingpins in the organization that are responsible for this problem. Have they been held accountable? Have they been dismissed, and not only dismissed, charged for the criminal conduct that has been undertaken? We've not heard about that. We've not heard about the consequences of that conduct by people within the organization from the leadership of Eskom. And until we hear and see that there are strict consequences and that they're going to take corruption seriously, well then, how does the public have faith in an organization like Eskom and its government and its leadership?
That remains to be seen. But before we let you go, Wayne Duvenage, do you believe that we will find a permanent solution to the energy crisis?
Yeah, I think so. If we get serious about it, as I said, a lot of energy demand is being moved to private generation. So, you get the private sector now becoming involved only because they do provide the solutions to what government can't. So we will get there in time. But the question is, for how long is it going to take? Because every time we go into load shedding, it does a lot of damage to the economy. So as we've seen, we've come out of load shedding for a long time. We'll come out of it again and maybe have these sporadic incidences. But I think the big, the hard yards of the work that needs to be done to turn this elephant around, there's still a lot of work to be done. So not immediately, not in the next year or two, but it'll come in time if we have good leadership. And I think that leadership team, especially the board, is starting to take action. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't turn this massive tanker around very quickly, but we need to be consistent in the way we approach corruption and maladministration, and that's a concern for us.
All right, Wayne, thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Bye.
That was Wayne Duvenage, the OUTA CEO.